that's thrown around all over the place and in all eras, but very loosely and without ever being defined in terms of what it really means, is innovation. And the League of Legends community loves this term. Anyone that they say innovated or is an innovator or is innovative in coming up with things, they give massive amounts of credit to, and I think sometimes unduly. And so in light of the fact, what brought this topic up for me is that I just did my top 20 League of Legends players of all time list, and I'll put the links in the description below for the two parts of it. And as I was weighing it up, yes, innovation was a factor, but innovation was a factor within the context of level of play and impact on the game. Now, people always tie those two things together. They suggest that by being innovative and creating something new, you had an impact on the game. Now, to a degree, that's true, but your impact on the game still can only be based on how good your level of play is, how much you can win, how successful you are against opponents, these things. If you innovate something and bring it into the game and you can't use it in a certain way, or someone else even takes it from you and uses it better, then you don't somehow get credit for the game impact there. They get credit for using it against you and defeating you in that sense with it. That's something I want to break down here. So whenever people talk about innovation in this sense, I feel like part of the reason why they're overrating this quality in League of Legends is 2 points. One is that they're not understanding the bigger picture aspect of history. And so in League of Legends, when they talk about innovation, they will usually be talking about a great player who innovated something. And so then his play was great as well. And he used that in a way that was great. And so that's what they're kind of doing there. So what they've not done there is break down what they mean beyond just innovating. It has to be within certain hands and used in a certain sense. So, and secondly, they're not understanding that when you overvalue innovation like that, you'll end up with some really wacky scenarios that no one would agree with and don't make any sense, yet are the logical conclusions from saying that innovation is more important than not innovating in that particular respect. So I've got a great historical example for you here. I know a lot of people who follow esports don't follow real sports, but even though this is a little test before I get the real example going, for the people who do follow real sports, okay, so the NBA. Let's imagine you know any of the famous players in the NBA. You've probably heard of Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, maybe Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, these sorts of players, Charles Barkley. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of these names, even if you're not super into it, even if you just watch a bit of the NBA. Have you ever heard of Kenny Sailors? Now, I would bet quite a lot of money that 99% of people who are even hardcore NBA fans don't know who Kenny Sailors is and could not reference it. Now, the reason why I know who it is and why I'm going to bring it up now is because there was recently an article done that was quite interesting where someone managed to track down Kenny Sailors. And what they found when they tracked him down, this is the reason they discovered him, was this is the first person to actually really use a jump shot in basketball. Now, in basketball, except for people who are the centers, the big guys in the middle who go down low, super close to the basket and just do hook moves or just stand and dunk, etc., except for those sorts of players, and even them in a lot of cases when they're having to shoot a 7-foot shot or something, every single basketball player by default uses a jump shot. Because what they're doing is, before, people used to just shoot the same motion but from the ground. What they learned was, if you're facing someone taller than you or someone who's stood in front of you, then if you can jump first just before them so they don't jump at the same time, you can then shoot a shot over them and they can't block it. And it opens up a whole different aspect of the game. And so everyone by default in basketball uses a jump shot. Every great player I listed then that you can think of used jump shot. Yet the Kenny Sailors guy apparently innovated this. Now, who here, who's an NBA fan or not, thinks that the Kenny Sailors guy is a better basketball player than Michael Jordan because he innovated the jump shot and Michael Jordan used the jump shot? I would imagine nobody. Now, the Kenny Sailors guy, you might be thinking, well, was he still a great player? No, not in the slightest. He played 5 seasons in the NBA. He apparently did this jump shot the first time in a game in December 30th, 1942, when the NBA was fucking nothing back then. It wasn't even super competitive. It wasn't the same sort of sport it is now. He only played 5 seasons. He wasn't some super duper world champion, amazing player. He's just a little nobody who invented something. And what happened is he invented it. He was okay with it. Other people took it, refined it, used it more effectively, and Michael Jordan, when he uses a jump shot, who gives a fuck who invented it? The way Michael Jordan uses a jump shot has very little to do with the way that guy invented it or giving that guy credit. Michael Jordan gets his own credit for refining it and using it in this amazing manner and being super effective with it and dominating with it, having game impact, but from himself, not from just inventing. Inventing on its own should get some credit, but not more credit than using and refining. This can be brought into League of Legends in a few different ways. So a first one that people talk about innovation is nearly always to do with playing a champion first. So this champion isn't used in the meta at the moment. And then someone uses it and they say, right, he innovated that. Okay, but how good was he with it? If he just played it a few times, he won 1 game, lost 2 games with it, Well, that doesn't get a whole lot of credit from me, quite frankly. If he played it, won one game, lost 2 games with it, someone else in the scene saw him using it, copied it, but was better and won 5 games in a row with it, well, I'll give him a little bit of credit for inviting it, but that guy more credit for using it better. In the same sense, let's use a similar example of what I did with the basketball one there here. So Faker wasn't even close to the person who innovated picking Orianna. By the way, Toys wasn't the first person to pick Orianna. But let's think of Toys as the most famous name that used to be associated with Orianna, okay? He was very good. It was one of his best champions by far. And at the Season 2 Worlds, he was exceptional on this champion. Who here thinks that Toys' Orianna is better historically in terms of greatness than Faker's Orianna? I'm not talking about Faker plays now and the level of competitions now, just relative even to their eras. Faker's Orianna significantly better because the number of games, it was his most picked champion, the champion he had the most wins on. Faker is associated with Orianna. He's the god of Orianna, basically. He's been able to use it in all different tournaments, all types of opponents, all types of matchups, and just be godlike at it, and use it in different ways to how Toys used it. Innovation within it, even though he's not the first to pick it, he's not the first to even use it in some of those ways. Let's talk about, in that sense, using a champion in a certain way. So one of the first people to use Lee Sin as this kind of duelist, attacking, aggressive, gank-heavy jungler, Diamond Prox. People don't think of it now because he doesn't use it as much. This was the champion associated with him. This is what Diamond Prox went to work with and did all this amazing stuff on. Who thinks that Dandy's Lee Sin is worse, not just now and compared to then, but in the context of their eras than Diamond Prox's? Dandy's Lee Sin is godlike. The things he can do on it are Diamond Prox times 5, even in the cultural context of when it was, etc. He can be unreal on this champion. He can accomplish incredible things. He deserves more credit there than Diamond Prox does, even for the innovation. Even though in this particular case, we're even talking about 2 great players, just as we were with Toys and Faker. Even on that level, there can be an aspect of yes, Diamond Prox innovated. In that particular case, Toys didn't innovate, although he innovated some of the ways to use the champion. There's innovation, and we give them some credit. Definitely, we're saying they're great players, and this is a part of their greatness. But we're talking about this other guy who didn't innovate directly, but in a sense, he innovated in as much as he took something that was an idea, and he took it further. He took it he didn't do the first 2 steps, he did the next 5 steps, and he refined it. Refining is its own form of innovation, because you're innovating something that already exists as opposed to taking something from nothing. But refining should get a lot of credit, because a lot of the great players who didn't directly innovate, they're the refiners. They've done even more with these things. That deserves a lot of credit. And not even just innovating, then refining, but then a third one, using it effectively, using it and dominating, using it and beating people in this way, using it in aspects of taking maybe something you didn't innovate, you didn't refine, but you can then apply it in a way that those other guys couldn't. That deserves its own credit. That's a level of play. That's a level of game impact. That deserves credit. There's these 3 things. To give you one last example, Genja and Chaos innovated a fuck ton of things in terms of builds and champion uses and matchups. Now, who here, I purposely picked those ones because those are players who had success, but nobody here is going to say, oh, I think Genja and Chaos were greater AD carries than Impanuzzi. Like, I don't know anyone who would have that opinion. And yet those players innovated a fuck ton more than those players did. Impanuzzi, to a degree, innovated very little, just took other things other people did, refined it a bit more, and in some cases didn't even refine it a bit more. If they were taking like something Doublelift did and already taken it to a very high level, they just took it and used it better and had more game impact with it and were better players and had better level of play on it. And they're gods. They're much better than Genji and Chaos, even historically and in terms of context. The innovation thing doesn't outweigh that. That's part of the problem, as you've seen, as I've analysed it and broken it down. The reason why I'm able to approach this and give people credit and break up the credit in an appropriate manner is because I've taken this nebulous term, innovation, this vague term, and I haven't just applied it to one of those things, and I haven't just thrown it around, and I haven't like neglected to explain why. I've broken it into subcategories. And so instead of just innovation, we've got inventing, coming up with something, refining, taking something to the next steps of being better, using it effectively. Pardon me. These 3 categories, these are the subcategories of the innovation topic, or connected to innovation as an idea. People could have, as you've seen with some of these examples, so innovating number 1, refining number 2, using it effectively number 3. Someone could only do number 2 and number 3, refining and using effectively, and if they're exceptional at those, they can be better than the guy who invented it. Someone could only do number 3, only use it really effective, and yet be better than the guy who invented it and refined concepts of it, but couldn't apply it as effectively. If you can apply it way better even, that might match it up or even make you better. These should be obvious from the examples I've given and the historical sports example I gave. There's an undue bias given to this idea, because when you come to a top 20 list like I made, innovation is a factor. That's something to do with it. That is great. But at the end of the day, that's not superseding anyone who didn't innovate. The idea that someone's a god but he didn't innovate doesn't mean that he can never get past a certain level. This guy's forever boosted above. Because it's the problem with the Diamond Procs example. The way people talk about Diamond Procs, the problem with it is, okay, they'll use it in an aggressive manner. Like, I'll say Dandy's the best jungler ever, right? And they'll be like, no, Diamond Procs has to be given credit because he innovated so much and he invented a lot of those things. And when he played, he had no equal in a certain way. Okay, let's take all that logic now and just shelf it for a second. So I'm comparing to Dandy, and you're saying that's why Dandy can't be okay. By that logic, what can Dandy ever do to overtake Diamond Procs? Pretty much nothing, unless he invents a bunch of stuff now, mega late in the game, where all the champions have been tried almost, lots of the builds have been tried, a lot of this stuff. He has to take all that, invent a bunch of stuff, on top of the fact that his level of play is already much higher than Diamond Procs' for much longer, against much better competition, now with much better results at winning world championships, etc. Overall, with a higher level of consistent play. He has every factor except that innovation one of the inventing thing, or even some of the refining. He doesn't have that entirely. That's the only thing holding back in your world from the Diamond Procs example. Well, now, in this particular scenario, how can anyone ever overtake Diamond Procs? What would it ever take to change it so Diamond Procs isn't the great? So Diamond Procs could now play 17 more seasons, not invent anything new, not play well, not have any results. But unless Dandy invents and all that stuff, even after 20 seasons of play, you'd always be able to use the same logic pull it off the shelf and go, well, he invented more, did more. And it wouldn't matter if Dandy had won 7 worlds and he'd won 25 OGNs and 5 LPLs. Like, it wouldn't matter at that point. The logic doesn't work. It's not consistent. This isn't a criteria or a way to apply criteria to judge who's the greatest of all time. When you talk about greatest of all time, it's not just about who invented something new or changed the game in that way. A big part of it, a massive part of it, is how the fuck did they play? Now listen, once we look at how they play, yeah, if you play like a total god but you played for Copenhagen Wolves your whole career, then yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you the same sort of credit as someone who played like 95% as good as you but played on world championship teams, won them and was the main star of the team. Yeah, these factors then, there are factors that come into it in terms of modulating how your individual play did affect the game and should be judged. But at the same time, you can't just say that innovation somehow trumps all the play. Because otherwise, first of all, you're giving away too much of an advantage to people from Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. Because as the game goes on, there's less you can directly innovate in that sense. As in, you can innovate stuff, but you're not going to innovate it where you do something and it's so broken that you're the only person in the world who just dominates for like 6 months where other people haven't figured it out. And the level of play is lesser so that you're just utter dumpstering everyone. That's very unlikely it's going to happen as the game gets bigger and it's more competitive and we've got more aspects and more people analysing the game. Now innovations come along and people adapt to them within a few weeks. There's very rarely this thing that's so broken the whole season it's just wrecking everything, is nothing you can do versus except try and get it yourself. That's not the case. So that gives an undue bias. So I hope I've broken it down reasonably there, because I think as long as people keep overrating innovation in that sense, it's going to fuck up every single historical context like that. And it's just going to discredit some amazing, great players that are gods now just because they didn't exist 2 years before and invent something but use it in a poorer fashion. Now, don't take credit again from people who innovated stuff. Like a great example is Reapid. Some of the ways he innovated how to play from the top lane, in terms of the way he would teleport in, use his team, set his team up to do something so that then he could transition leads in the top lane into the overall team fight. That's incredible stuff. But that's because he fits all the criteria there. He invented it, he refined it, and then he used it the most effectively. It's not just that he invented it and then couldn't use it, couldn't refine it any further. It's not just that he invented it, refined it, but then couldn't apply it effectively, and then someone else applied it more effectively. It's not any of those factors. It has to be the three combined. Whenever you get to tricky topics that don't seem to fully fit, break them down into subtopics, define those, then you'll either figure out what you can't figure out, and you'll figure out what it is that you don't yet understand and have to research and look for the answers for more, or you'll be able to apply it more effectively than just haphazardly sticking this label of innovation on him and go, well, he didn't innovate, so he's not as good. That's no way to live.